with Jimmie Johnson, driver of the number 48 Lowe's Chevrolet, second in points, 3 wins, and obviously always a favorite at Martinsville. So talk a little bit about coming back this weekend.
Yeah, exciting. Just excited to be back to this racetrack, as everybody can assume and knows. This track, I think, over the years has turned into one of my favorites, not only from the success we've had on the track, but you drive in here and you still get a sense of a previous era, unlike at a lot of racetracks. So I really enjoy coming here in Darlington and kind of have a view back into what NASCAR was years ago, and I still think that environment exists here, and it's fun to come to the track and race. And then from a fan perspective, I think you get a great action-packed race. You're up and close and right near the cars. I enjoy watching cars myself here on the racetrack, so just a fun place and excited to be here.
Jimmie, so we'll go ahead and start here in the front.
Jim Noble, ESPN. Have you really gotten with Chad and Ron and gone through everything that happened in Kansas that they did to the car? Are you still kind of blown away by what took place there and then the car that you had once they were pretty much finished with it?
Yeah, after the race, we looked around and did some serious bench racing about the car, and then on Tuesday through our team debrief and walking through the shop and seeing the guys, just impressed with what they did. And also during the crash, we were fortunate that the way in which the rear bumper hit the wall and some of the tubing in the back of the car, the direction it went, one piece of tubing was down, which everybody could see dragging, but there's another piece back there that stayed intact and actually went up and added support for the deck lid and the spoiler and all that. And that was key, because if that piece of tubing fell out or hit in a different way and pushed it in a different direction, we wouldn't have been able to support the deck lid like we did.
What does that say about you guys moving forward? There's been a lot of comparison between your team and the 2 team in certain races. What is it? Do you think it made a big statement for your guys to be able to show this is what we can do?
It did, and we'll have to wait till Homestead to see, where that fits into the story. In one light, I look at it and think, I made a mistake and gave up points. I really felt like we could have won the race. It was a day that Brad wasn't, leading and running in the top 2 or 3, and we could have closed the points up if not got ahead. So I hope it's a story that we preserved a championship, we minimized the damage, minimized the loss. But at the same time, I'd still, regret that I didn't take advantage of that opportunity.
All right, we'll move to Melinda here, and then Woody.
Melinda Adams, ESPN. Between you, Brad Kay, and Denny, who do you feel like the pressure is really on in the chase?
It's on all of us, but the points leader, I think, has the most pressure. I like being in that position because you're not worried about. You're still in control. When you're leading the points, it's in your hands, but with that control comes pressure. So especially later in the season. Especially in the chase, too. During different parts of the season, it's an honor to lead the points. That honor is still there right now, but, that light at the end of the tunnel is becoming much more vivid, and there's a picture actually there at the end of that tunnel, and that pressure starts to set in.
All right, go ahead, Woody.
Woody Kane with MRN. Jimmie, a couple years ago you were talking about struggling at Bristol, and then suddenly things kind of clicked for you and you really started to feel comfortable there and get it. I was wondering if there was a similar moment like that for you here, if there was a time when you didn't quite have the feel and then suddenly it clicked for you.
Yeah, I was pretty lost my first few trips here. We tested, I think, for both races, and my second year back, or maybe second race back, sometime early though, I was, at the time I was disappointed, but the leader, Tony Stewart, caught me and lapped me, and following him just turned the light switch on in my head as to what to do around here, and I was able to keep pace with him and get a lap back and have a decent finish that day, and that really set things in motion for me.
Hey, Jimmie, Carlos Mendez, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Hey, last week was an example of Hendrick's resourcefulness. Do you think there's a mystique around Hendrick and its ability, and is it an advantage for you and the other 3 guys racing on the track?
Yeah, I really think so, but to be honest, when you get to the end of the year and the teams that are fighting for the championship are there for a reason, And it is a team sport. It's not just the driver getting the job done in the car. It's the people preparing the race cars. It's the pit stops. It's crisis management, which we had last weekend. And, I would expect that out of the top teams. And I certainly expect it out of my team. I think they exceeded expectations with how well the car performed after the wreck. But, I would assume that other teams are capable of doing that too at this day, this stage of the game.
Is there anything special Hendrick does, or you guys have kind of a esprit de corps out there, a camaraderie?
Within the 48 team, we've been together a long time, and we have all the tools and resources that we need to go compete for a championship. Rick's an amazing man and a great guy to work for, and knows how to lead people. So, I think the amount of time the 48 team has been together, and the low turnover rate, and how consistent the personnel has been, gives us a big advantage.
All right, let's go to Mike right here. And then
MikeHembrySpeed.com. With things so close in the championship race, does what happened at Kansas last week change your thinking at all on where the edge is and how close you can race to that edge without getting in an accident and causing a big drop in points, a big deficit? Or can you even think about backing off that quarter of an inch to avoid that again?
Yeah, I want to learn from my mistakes, but it's such a fine line we walk, and it's hard to look at yourself in the middle of a race and say, all right, am I at 100% or 101, 99? The line's getting ever smaller, and it's with what we had and going down a lap after leading the race and the caution coming out when it did, my eagerness to get through traffic. The 56 bobbled in front of me, and I was more eager to jump in the gas and try to get position on him, and went through his dirty air and being hard on the throttle, shook my car loose. And so, they're just little teeny things that add up, and it's hard in the moment to recognize that, but that's something that we're all faced with and something I've done a very nice job with in years past, but everybody makes mistakes, and I would rather side on the aggressive side because I know my competition is. I know that the 2-car is certainly racing that way, and Denny is as well. So you got to stay aggressive. I think that's you can't protect and you can't conserve at this stage. It's all about living on that ragged edge.
all right, we're going to go to Mark in the back, up to Jim, Claire, Nate, Reed, and David.
Jimmy, Mark Arrow, PRN. In listening to some comments by Mark Martin recently, he said, I'm old school, and when it comes to deciding whether I'm injured too much to be in a race car, he said, I want that decision to be mine and not a doctor. How do you feel about that, and do you feel that, given what happened to Junior, NASCAR thinking about different protocols now in order to be a little more proactive when the driver has a hard wreck? Your thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the new protocol that could potentially be coming or Mark's comments, but in all sports, in just even not even sports, but just your general medical exams. We all go in to get a physical every year, and I'm sure we're all squinting extra hard to read the eye chart, and you leave there thinking, man, I made it, good. Whatever it might be, that's just a bad example of what it's like in the doctor's office. So I feel like in our sport, like others, especially relative to concussions, there needs to be, we need to be sure that we're not putting a driver back in harm's way. We know that a series of concussions within a short period of time is very dangerous, and we need to keep our sport safe. And change is coming. I know if somebody's living through it, it's probably going to be tough and might be on the slow side of returning to the track, but with safety in mind, I think it's important.
With the way we have the point system now, there's always been a lot of talk about, guys have raced hurt a lot. You have everybody, if you drive long enough, does. Is there still that pressure? Would you find a hard time if you got really hurt to back out with 2 or 3 races left in the year and you're still in the hunt?
Yeah, that's tough. I knock on wood, so fortunate to have not had that in my auto racing career. Now racing dirt bikes, the very first championship I won, blew my knee apart, had reconstructive knee surgery, missed 2 weekends, but still had the points lead. We figured out that if I started the last 2 races, I would get a starting point and I would tie my competitor, and I would win the tiebreaker due to wins. So at 8 years old, I rode around that dirt bike track with my leg in a cast and rode my 1 lap to tie points so I could get the big trophy at the end of the year. So, I mean, it's just wired in competitors. It's what you do. It's crazy. I mean, it's just what we do.
All right, let's go to Jim up here, up front. And then we'll go to Claire.
Jim Utter, Charlotte Observer. A lot of people say coming in here, Jimmie Johnson must be looking forward to this race. He runs really good here. Same with Denny Hamlin. Even Brad's record is, I mean, he's not won, but he's had a pretty solid record. When you look at it, though, as these guys, that these are the guys you're racing for the championship, is it more pressure, more difficult, harder to prepare for when you know the guys that you're competing against are also good here? Or do you try not to worry about what the competition's record is and focus more on your own?
I try to stay focused on my record and my team, but there is a part of my mind that thinks of strengths and weaknesses of the other drivers. In general, I feel like the way everybody's running, you might get a point or 2, or if you're fortunate enough to win, you'll get 3 on a guy, and that's kind of what we've seen, and that's where my disappointment from last week comes into play, because I feel like I could have got a good chunk on the 2 and the 11. But coming here, the way we're sitting in points, I would hope to get a handful of points on the 2 car, and then at the same time, Denny, I got a few points on him last week, so if I gave up a few, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And I really think this going down the stretch, it's going to be a game of, a few points at a time. And then that's just the way my mindset is. We're in years past, there's bigger chunks between the guys. And I guess some of it might have just been the point system at the time. I mean, you'd be 35 points out and felt pretty good about it, but you're only, I guess, now 5 cars away from someone. So that probably plays into it a little bit. But I'm focused on it this week a little bit, and if I lose a little of the 11, it's not what I want, but I got a few last week, and if I'm able to get some on the 2, then we did what we should here.
All right. Claire, go ahead.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. I talked to Chad last night, and I asked him about the stress of the chase, and because you would think that it would be so incredibly stressful, and he lives, eats, breathes, and if he could just do the season, the last 4 races, he said he would do it. Said he was sleeping like a baby, that, he just lives for this time of year. And I'm wondering if you don't see that stress in him, if that is actually true in what you see, and if you're the guy who kind of bears you've always said that you sort of look at it negatively to see what could go wrong maybe, and then I'm wondering how you feel the stress of it and how you see that in Chad.
Well, I think that when you have fast race cars and the team is well-rounded and performing on all fronts, it's easy to sleep. And that's where we are right now. And that's where Chad is. And I've been more calm and relaxed in this chase than I can remember in quite some time. So, if I look back to last year and the frustration of, putting in all the time, working as hard as we do as Team 48, and not having the speed, watching guys pull away from you and outrun you, that's tough. That's when the frustration sets in. But right now, we're competitive, and we put a lot of stock in that, and we feel good about it.
Okay, let's go to Nate up here.
Nate Ryan, USA Today. Jimmie, you haven't missed a race probably in more than a decade, but if you were to have something that took you out for a couple of weeks and then come back, what kind of a challenge would that be? And is there anything more about this track in particular that would be difficult if you'd been away from it for a couple of weeks and then getting back in?
I think this track would be really good for most injuries coming back. I would assume a road course or Bristol would probably be, or Darlington would be on the tougher side. Your Bristol, the repetition's so much that from a head injury, I could imagine it would be tough to it's hard to keep your head straight there to start with, let alone a head injury. And then the physical demands, if you had a broken bone or something, it'd be tough. And that also speaks to road courses from a physical standpoint. And then the hand-eye coordination of braking points and turn-in points and all that would be really tough. But here, it is a small track and there is a bit of repetition to it, but I think it's about as good as you get for a track to return to after an injury. And I know I can also speak to the Gresham track. I've tested there. That's a fast little racetrack. So if you come out of Gresham feeling good and don't hit anything over there, I think you'll come to Martinsville and things will fall in line pretty quick.
All right, we'll go to Reed, and we're going to have to end with David Newton because we're close on time. So go ahead, Reed.
Reed Spencer with the NASCAR Wire Service. Jimmie, given the way the championship was decided last year and how close it is again this year, at this point, Brad and Denny both have 5 wins. You've got 3. Do you really feel like you need to win 2 of the next 4 races?
I do. I mean, I feel like we've been close, and I hate that a few have slipped away, this year, especially in the chase. But that stuff's behind me. I'm looking forward. We're at a great track. I feel like, all 4 tracks remaining, we're one of the favorites to win, and I feel like you have to win, and you have to win during the chase to be the champion. I mean, certainly it can be won without, but my mindset right now is win, win, win.
All right, and we'll end up front here with David Newton. Can I have a mic up front, please?
Yeah, David Newton, ESPN.com. You hear drivers talk all the time about the thing that really worries them in a chase situation is what happens with other drivers on the track that impacts you. When you know, like Kyle Busch and Ryan Newman were ticked off at each other after last week's race, and there could be some retribution here at a short track. If they're racing around each other and you get in that area, does that go through your mind? Do you worry about it? Do you stress about trying to get around them or anything?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and there's far more on the line now for the championship contenders, but when we come back to short tracks, everybody's aware of what rifts exist out there, and when you see those guys get around one another, give them some space, and just try to be heads up and avoid something. But we pay attention. I feel like sometimes the 1.5 miles are a bit more dangerous when there's a rift going on and guys racing real hard. Here, you can hit things within reason and not destroy your race car. But on the faster tracks, or Phoenix even, it's hard to get away from anybody at Phoenix if there's paybacks and stuff going on there, and the speed's so much higher. If you hit the fence, you're behind the wall working on something.
All right. Thank you, Jimmie. Good luck this weekend.